I thought I was about to surprise my wife with a New Year's Eve celebration she'd never forget. Instead, I walked straight into the kind of nightmare you don't wake up from. How do you move forward when everything you believed about your life is shattered in a single night? Let me start at the beginning. I'd been gone for 6 days on a business trip to Denver. Sales pitch, new clients, late nights, conference dinners, the usual grind. I missed her. My wife, Laura. We'd been married 7 years. No kids yet, just each other, our routines, the laughter over late-night snacks, the fights over which show to watch, the quiet comfort of shared silence. My last meeting ended early, and I got this idea, cheesy, maybe, but heartfelt. I'd catch an earlier flight, surprise her before midnight on New Year's Eve. On the drive home from the airport, I stopped for her favorite, almond croissants from Marnie's, a bottle of sparkling rose, and tulips, her favorite flower, ever since our third date. I even grabbed those little sparklers she loved lighting on the balcony every December 31st. My chest was buzzing with anticipation. I texted her, "Home soon. Got a surprise for you." The message didn't go through. Weird. I figured maybe her phone died. It happens. Still, as I pulled into our neighborhood, a knot formed in my stomach. The house was dark. No lights. Not even the warm glow of the hallway lamp we always left on. I tried calling. Straight to voicemail. Maybe she went to her sister's, I told myself. Maybe she's planning something too. But her car wasn't in the driveway. My hands were shaking, just a little, as I tried the front door. Locked. Not unusual, except Laura always texted if she was going out late. I walked back to my car, trying to will the anxiety out of my system. That's when I remembered, I'd left my other car, the one I don't usually drive, at Nate's place before the trip. Nate is, or was, my best friend. We've known each other since college. He lives 10 minutes away and always helps me out when I need a hand. I figured I'd grab my keys and see if Laura had stopped by there. I didn't expect anything. I didn't suspect anything. But when I pulled up to his house, his porch light was on. The driveway was empty, probably parked in the garage. I walked up to the door, but it was slightly ajar. Weird. Nate's the type to double-bolt everything. And then I heard it. Voices. Her voice. His voice. Laughter. I don't know what made me do it. I pushed the door open, slow. It creaked, just slightly. I stood in the hallway. The world tilted sideways. Laura. My wife. In Nate's bed. Half covered. Laughing. My name never came up. They didn't even notice me. I walked out. My feet moved without thinking. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't even feel the cold. I dropped the croissants on the curb. The tulips were crushed under the car door as I climbed in and slammed it shut. And then, as if the universe wasn't done twisting the knife, I saw it. Right by Nate's trash bins, just near my car. A baby cradle. A real one. With a child. Wrapped in a thin pink blanket, cheeks flushed from the cold, crying. I blinked, trying to process what I was looking at. There was a note pinned to the blanket. Just 2 words. Please help. I'll never forget how I stood there, shaking, torn between my own unraveling life and a tiny stranger someone had abandoned like trash. I didn't go back inside. I didn't yell. I didn't fight. I picked up the baby and drove away. She couldn't have been more than 4 months old. Her cry was weak, not frantic, but tired. Like she'd been wailing for a long time and was just too exhausted to keep going. I wrapped my jacket around the cradle as best I could and placed her gently on the back seat. I didn't go home. I couldn't. Not to that house where her perfume still hung in the bathroom and her favorite mug sat on the counter like nothing was broken. I couldn't face the photos on the wall, the half-used shampoo, or the ring she sometimes forgot to take off before bed. So instead, I drove. First to the local precinct. The baby was quiet by then, almost eerily so. Her tiny hands clenched the edge of the blanket. I tried to explain what happened, but the woman at the front desk barely looked up until I placed the cradle on the counter. "I found her like this," I said. "Outside a house. Just left." That got her attention. But what followed was hours of questions, paperwork, and endless waiting. They couldn't find immediate foster care placement. It was New Year's Eve. Skeleton staff. No one available to take a newborn last minute. "We'll contact CPS first thing in the morning," the officer said. "For now, we'll have to place her in temporary holding." He meant the back room. A cell, basically. Sterile. Fluorescent lighting. No crib. Just a mat. I looked at her, that tiny girl with eyes too big for her face, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't just leave her on a floor and walk away. "Is there a better option?" I asked, almost begging. The officer sighed. "Only if a temporary guardian volunteers. But that means you're legally responsible for her well-being." "I'll do it," I heard myself say. The words came out before I even thought them. I spent the night in a daze. We stayed in a cheap roadside motel because I couldn't go home. I bought formula, diapers, and a pack of tiny onesies at a 24-hour pharmacy. I didn't even know how to feed her. The first time I tried, I held the bottle wrong. She cried so loud the walls shook. But then, around 3 a.m., she finally fell asleep on my chest. Her head tucked beneath my chin, her breathing slow and steady. And that's when it hit me. I had no idea who she was. No clue where she came from. No name. No birthday. Just a handwritten note and a pink blanket that smelled like lavender and stale cigarette smoke. The next morning, I returned to the station. I asked again, had they found anything? Anyone missing a baby? Any leads on where she might have come from? The sergeant just shook his head. But one of the younger officers handed me something, a small slip of paper that had been folded and tucked beneath the lining of the cradle. A name. And part of an address. "Not verified," he said. "Could be nothing. But it's all we've got." That's how I found myself driving 2 towns over on January 1st, baby still strapped in the borrowed car seat, pulling up to a rundown apartment building. The door to 3B was open. I knocked once. No answer. Inside, the lights were off. Furniture overturned. A single lamp flickered in the hallway like it was hanging on for dear life. And then I heard it. Sobbing. Shallow, gasping sobs, coming from the bathroom. I opened the door slowly. She was in the bathtub, fully clothed, shaking uncontrollably. Empty pill bottles scattered on the tile. Her lips were blue. Her hands trembled as she cradled her knees. She didn't even notice me until I spoke. "Is this your daughter?" Her head snapped up. Her eyes, hollow and bloodshot, locked onto the baby in my arms. And then she crumbled. Collapsed into tears, reaching out with fingers that shook so hard they could barely form a gesture. "I didn't want to leave her," she whispered. "I just didn't know what else to do." I held the baby closer to my chest as the woman, the mother, I assumed, cried into her hands. The bathroom was stifling. The air thick with the smell of mildew, cheap soap, and something metallic, like blood or rust. "I thought she'd be safer without me," she whispered, rocking back and forth in the tub. "I thought if someone found her, maybe she'd have a chance." She kept her eyes locked on the baby. That tiny bundle who had no idea what she'd already lived through. I finally spoke. She does. She still does. But she needs you alive. It took hours before she could even stand. I helped her rinse off her face, wrapped her in the only clean blanket I could find, and carried the baby back and forth between the bedroom and kitchen while she tried to regain some sense of grounding. Her name was Maya. She was 23. She used to work at a local diner, but after getting pregnant, the hours dried up. The man who promised her everything vanished once the test came back positive. Her parents, devout, strict, cruel in the name of righteousness, kicked her out when she refused to get rid of the mistake. The apartment she was in belonged to a friend of a friend. No lease. No job. No support. The baby's name? Hope. Because that's what I wanted her to be, she said softly, touching the baby's tiny hand. My little hope in a world that didn't want either of us. I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. I'd come here furious, betrayed, heartbroken. And now I stood in the center of a crumbling apartment with a child pressed to my chest, talking to a woman who had nearly ended her life because no one had been there to tell her she mattered. I couldn't just walk away. Not now. The next few days were a blur. I didn't go back to my house. I couldn't face the ghost of my marriage just yet. Instead, I rented a short-term place near Maya's, helped her get to a clinic for a proper checkup, stocked the fridge, paid for heating. She didn't ask for anything. But I offered. I kept telling myself I was just doing the decent thing. That it had nothing to do with Laura or Nate or the mess they left behind. But that wasn't true. Deep down, I knew I was clinging to something, anything, that felt real, honest, and broken in a way I could actually help fix. Maya was fragile, yes, but she wasn't weak. She'd survived more than most people her age. She didn't want charity. She wanted a job, a place to stay, and a way to earn her life back. One night, after a long day of helping her apply for benefits and daycare assistance, we sat on the floor, Hope sleeping in the little bassinet I bought, her soft baby snores filling the room like music. You don't have to keep doing this, Maya said, not looking at me. You don't owe me anything. I know, I replied. But maybe I want to. It's a strange thing, the way two shattered people can begin to feel whole just by existing in the same space. It wasn't love. Not yet. But something new had started. Something warm. Something like healing. Hope had a little hiccup when she slept. This tiny hic every few minutes, barely audible unless you were listening for it. But it kept me awake the first few nights. Not because it was loud, it wasn't, but because every time it happened, I found myself checking to make sure she was still breathing. I wasn't her father. I wasn't even her blood relative. But it didn't matter. Something inside me had shifted. After everything that happened, the betrayal, the hollow house, the kind of rage that makes your fingers shake, I didn't want to sit alone anymore. I didn't want to stew in bitterness while pretending it wasn't eating me alive. And holding hope? It did something no amount of therapy or distraction ever could. It reminded me that life was still happening, still needing, still fragile and worth protecting. Maya got a job 2 weeks later. Part-time at a floral shop, just a block from where we were staying. The owner was a single mom herself and didn't ask many questions. She paid cash and let Maya bring hope in during slow hours. Watching her bloom in that space, no pun intended, was surreal. She moved differently now. She held herself like someone who was still scared, but learning how to fight anyway. I admired it more than I could say. We began falling into a rhythm. I'd make breakfast early, coffee for me, tea for her. Hope's formula. Maya would head to work, and I'd watch the baby while taking Zoom calls from my laptop. We were strangers just weeks ago, and now we were something else. Co-survivors. Roommates with a shared mission. Maybe even friends. But it was more than logistics. There was something delicate growing in the silence between us. The way she'd laugh at my attempts to cook. The way she handed me hope like she trusted me implicitly. The way our eyes met and lingered too long before either of us looked away. It was terrifying. It was beautiful. One night, after putting Hope to bed, I poured us both a glass of wine. We sat on the floor, legs stretched out, the room warm from the little space heater buzzing nearby. "She's going to know," Maya said suddenly. "That we didn't give up on her." "She already does," I answered. She looked at me then, really looked. Not as someone who saved her. Not as a man caught in the ruins of a broken marriage. But as someone who stayed. I wanted to reach for her hand, but I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I asked, "Do you ever miss him? The father?" She shook her head slowly. "I miss the lie. The dream he sold me. But not him." And then she turned the question back on me. "Do you miss her?" The answer caught in my throat. "I miss who I thought she was," I said eventually. "But the real her? The woman who could look me in the face after sleeping with my best friend? I don't even recognize her anymore." We didn't say much after that. Just sat there in the soft glow of the heater, listening to Hope's little snores from the other room. Two broken people. One tiny baby. And a silence that felt more like peace than absence. There's something about folding baby clothes that humbles you. They're impossibly small, like the world hadn't planned for someone so fragile, yet here she is, needing layers of protection and love. I caught myself folding and refolding the same onesie 3 times before realizing I was just stalling. It had been over a month since I found Hope outside Nate's house. Since I walked out on a marriage I thought was real. Since I stopped trying to understand why people betray you and started focusing on the few who don't. Maya was standing at the sink, scrubbing bottles. Her hair was tied in a messy bun, sleeves rolled up, face flushed from the heater that never quite warmed the corners of the apartment. She hummed quietly to herself, a lullaby, maybe. I didn't ask. I just listened. And I thought, this right here feels more like home than anything I've had in years. One afternoon, while I was bouncing Hope in my lap, she burped so hard it startled herself, then promptly threw up all over my shirt. Maya burst out laughing. Real, unfiltered laughter. The kind you only hear when someone forgets to be sad. I didn't even care about the shirt. We were getting used to each other. Sometimes I'd catch her watching me, not suspiciously, not cautiously, but with this quiet look like she was trying to decide if I was too good to be true. I didn't blame her. The world had taught her that kindness always came with strings. But I was trying to show her something different. Not saviorhood. Not rescue. Just presence. Just a man who meant what he said and stayed when it was hard. We moved into a better apartment in February. I paid the deposit, she insisted on covering groceries and daycare. Fair is fair, she said, chin up, stubborn pride glowing in her cheeks. It was nothing fancy, but it had 2 bedrooms and a working heater. Hope got a proper crib. Maya got her own key. I gave her space, but not distance. She was no longer a guest in my life. She was part of it now. One night, as I was locking up, Maya came into the living room in her pajamas, holding a photo frame. She handed it to me. Inside was a picture of Hope, our first photo together, actually. I was holding her in one arm, Maya beside me, mid-laugh. Someone at the clinic had taken it on their phone, printed it, and given it to her. I want this to be her story, Maya said softly. Not where she came from. But who showed up. I couldn't speak. I just nodded, blinking back the kind of tears that don't fall, but burn quietly behind your eyes. Something had started growing between us, not loud or dramatic, but steady. The kind of bond that comes from shared coffee at 6 a.m., grocery runs with a baby strapped to your chest, and learning how to soothe each other's storms without using words. It wasn't the future I had planned. But it was beginning to feel like the one I wanted. March came with rain and soft morning light, the kind that filters through curtains and makes everything look gentler than it really is. Hope was growing fast. She'd started making these little cooing noises every time Maya walked in the room. Like she already knew where safety lived. Maya, for her part, had begun to reclaim her edges. The shadows beneath her eyes faded. She wore colors again. She'd come back from work smelling like lilacs and soil from the flower shop, hands covered in dirt and hope. And me? I'd stopped checking Laura's social media. Stopped wondering if Nate still had my spare keys. Stopped asking why betrayal always comes dressed as closeness. Because I had new questions now. Like, how do you know when you're ready to start over? And what does love look like when it's not trying to impress anyone? I kept the ring in a drawer for weeks before I took it out again. It wasn't her ring. Not Laura's. That one was long gone. I'd flushed it the day after I left, watched it swirl into oblivion like everything else we built. This new one was simple, a delicate gold band, a small diamond, nothing flashy. Just honest. I didn't even know why I bought it when I did. Maybe it was the night Maya fell asleep on my shoulder after Hope's first fever. Maybe it was the way she always said, "Thank you," like she couldn't believe someone wanted to stay. Or maybe it was just because for the first time in years, my heart wasn't trying to protect itself. It was open. Vulnerable. Ready. I didn't propose then. Not yet. But I started planning. Quietly. Softly. Without urgency. I asked myself every day, are you doing this because you need to replace what you lost? Or because you finally know what it means to build something real? And every day, I came back to the same answer, this is real. This is home. In April, Maya got approved for a small housing grant. It meant stability, for her, for Hope. I was helping her fill out the paperwork when she paused and looked at me. You know you don't have to keep doing all this, right? I leaned back in my chair, heart beating just a little too fast. I want to. I know, she said. But sometimes I still don't understand why. I looked at her, the way her fingers fidgeted with the pen, the slight tremble in her voice, the way her eyes searched mine like they were bracing for the truth. So I told her. Because you stayed when you didn't have to. Because you didn't break when life tried to. And because loving both of you doesn't feel like a favor. It feels like breathing. She blinked, tears threatening to spill. Then she whispered, don't say that unless you mean it. I smiled, steady and certain. I do. It was a Thursday morning when I realized I wanted to marry her. Nothing big happened. No dramatic gesture or lightning bolt kiss. Just this quiet little scene that unfolded in the kitchen. Maya was dancing. Barefoot, in an oversized hoodie, holding Hope against her hip while humming to a song playing low on the speaker. The baby giggled. Maya spun slowly, grinning with her eyes closed, a spoon still in her hand. There were smudges of oatmeal on her cheek and flour in her hair. And I just stood there, frozen, holding a mug of coffee that had gone cold. I had never loved someone like that. Not the kind of love that strikes you, but the kind that stays. That burrows deep into your bones and makes you think, God, this is what it was always supposed to feel like. That night, after Hope was down, I brought out the ring. I didn't get on one knee. We were sitting on the couch, tangled in a blanket, the TV playing something neither of us was watching. I turned to her, nervous but calm, and said, Maya, I don't know what the right way is to ask this, so I'm just going to ask. She looked over, eyes wide. I held out the box, still closed. I don't care how we label it. I don't care about timing, or anyone else's expectations. I just know that when I picture my future, you're in it. Hope's in it. Us, together. If you're willing. I want to build a life with you. Officially. She didn't say anything at first. Just opened the box. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "You really want to marry me?" "I already feel married to you," I said. "But I want to make it real." She nodded slowly. Then all at once, she launched into me, wrapping her arms around my neck, sobbing into my shoulder. "Yes," she said over and over. "Yes, I want this. I want you." We didn't announce anything right away. No social media, no calls. We weren't hiding. We were protecting something sacred, something that hadn't come from flowers and grand gestures but from long nights, sick babies, shared grief, and hard-won peace. That kind of love doesn't need fireworks. It just needs truth. Hope turned 1 in August. We threw her a small party in the park. Just a few friends, some neighbors, a cake with more frosting than structure. Maya wore a soft yellow dress. I wore a shirt that Hope had once thrown up on. It felt fitting. She took her first step that day. Right toward me. And I caught her, laughing and crying at the same time, while Maya clapped and cheered behind her. That moment? That was everything. A new family. Built from the ruins of betrayal. Stronger for the scars. I didn't expect to see him there. It was mid-September. A Tuesday. Grocery run. I had Hope strapped to my chest in a carrier, her head bobbing gently as I picked out produce. She liked the color of bananas. Always reached for them, even when we didn't need any. I turned into the cereal aisle, and there he was. Nate. He didn't see me at first. He was staring at a box of granola like it held the answers to the universe. I hadn't spoken to him since that night. Since I walked out of his house with rage in my veins and a baby in my arms. He looked older somehow. Tired. His clothes were more worn than I remembered. Maybe it was the lighting. Maybe it was my imagination. I didn't plan to say anything. I should have walked away. But he looked up. His eyes widened when he saw me. Then flicked to the baby. Then back to me. We both froze. No words. Just the kind of silence that hangs in the air like a warning. He took the first step. "Hey," he said softly. I didn't respond. "Is that your baby?" "She's mine," I said. "She may not be by blood. But she's mine." He nodded slowly. "Look, man." "No," I cut in. "You don't get to open with 'look, man.' Not after everything." He had the audacity to look ashamed. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he muttered. "It just. You don't accidentally sleep with your best friend's wife, Nate." A woman pushing a cart paused nearby. Realized the tension. Turned and hurried away. I took a breath, adjusting Hope against my chest. "She left me for you?" I asked. "Or did she just settle for the first familiar face while I was out working to build our future?" He looked down. "She's not with me anymore." I blinked. "Wow. Shocking." "She said it was a mistake," he mumbled. "That she panicked. That you were distant. That she didn't feel seen." I stared at him. "You know what's wild? I used to wonder if I was to blame. If maybe I was too distant. Too tired. Too distracted. But you know what I've realized?" He didn't answer. I leaned in, voice low but firm. "She didn't cheat because I was distant. She cheated because she was entitled. Because I made her life too easy, and she mistook convenience for neglect. And you were just weak enough to let her drag you down with her." He winced. "Good. Do you hate me?" he asked after a moment. No, I said. You don't even matter enough to hate anymore. He opened his mouth again, maybe to say something about redemption or regret, but I was already walking past him. Hope gurgled against my chest, one hand reaching up to tug my hoodie string. That's what mattered now. Not the ghosts in the grocery store. Not the wreckage I left behind. But the future I was walking toward. We didn't do anything big. No fancy venue. No tuxedos or cathedral-length veils. No long guest list or seating chart drama. It was just us, Hope, and a beach an hour outside the city, where the sand was soft and the water cold but clean. We chose a Wednesday. Intentionally. Because we didn't need a Saturday spectacle. Because real love doesn't care about weekend rates or Instagram reels. Maya wore a simple white dress she found at a thrift shop, sleeveless, flowing, the fabric catching the ocean breeze like it was made for her. Her hair was pinned up with tiny pearl clips. She walked barefoot down the sand toward me, holding Hope's hand as the toddler waddled beside her in a little cream dress we bought 2 sizes too big. She was stunning. Not because of the dress. Because she looked safe. Sure. Radiant in a way only someone who survived darkness can be. I wore a white shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows, and the same watch I'd worn through every heartbreak. It was finally keeping time for something worth remembering. Our officiant was a retired nurse who now did small ceremonies for couples who didn't want the noise. She read our vows. We read our own. Mine was short. I didn't find you. I found myself when I met you. And I found a life worth staying for. Maya's voice trembled, but she didn't break. You taught me that love doesn't rescue. It builds. Quietly, patiently. Every single day. And I want to keep building, with you. We both cried. So did the officiant. Hope clapped like she knew exactly what had happened. We sealed it with a kiss that tasted like salt water and something sacred. There was no reception. Instead, we drove back to the apartment, ordered Thai food, and fed Hope bits of rice noodles while Maya changed into pajamas. We danced to a scratchy old jazz record on the floor of our living room, holding each other close, Hope nestled between us. No cake. No toasts. Just the 3 of us. A family. Not perfect. Not planned. But undeniably real. A week later, the marriage license arrived in the mail. Maya held it like it was a map to somewhere she never thought she'd get to go. Is it weird that I still feel like this is all a dream? She asked. No, I said. But it's not. Promise? I nodded. I'm not going anywhere. And I meant it. It had been 3 years. 3 years since I walked in on my wife and my best friend. 3 years since I found a crying baby near a trash bin. 3 years since I made a choice to stay soft in a world that had tried to make me hard. We had another baby last year, a boy this time. We named him Eli. Hope is 4 now. She sings loudly, draws on walls, and introduces herself as Hope Ever After, because she once misunderstood when Maya called her our happily ever after. We never corrected her. Our home is filled with messy joy, toys under the couch, crayon streaks on the fridge, a sticky floor that we clean and re-clean every weekend. And I wouldn't trade any of it for a million penthouses or some curated, cold life with perfect furniture and no soul. Then, a few weeks ago, I ran into him again. Nate. At a networking event, of all places. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 3. Hair thinner, confidence cracked. I didn't expect him to approach me. But he did. Hey, he said, extending a hand. I didn't take it. We stood there for a moment in awkward silence until he exhaled. I just wanted to say. I heard you got remarried. I did. She looks happy. I saw pictures. Of course he had. We weren't hiding. We just weren't explaining ourselves anymore. She is happy, I said. He nodded. That's good. I'm glad. Then came the real question. The one I knew was brewing in him for years. How did you forgive her? I tilted my head. Who said I did? His mouth opened slightly, searching for some kind of justification, or maybe redemption. I didn't offer it. I moved on, I said calmly. There's a difference. He looked stunned. I leaned in, voice quiet. You think forgiveness is about setting someone else free. But sometimes, it's about not letting them occupy any more space in your life. He didn't respond. Just stood there, the weight of his choices etched into every line on his face. I don't hate you, Nate, I added. But I'll never be who I was before you betrayed me. And that's a good thing. Then I turned to walk away. And that was the last time I ever saw him. Back home that night, Maya was putting Eli to sleep while Hope was building a castle out of couch pillows. I sat down beside her, watching her concentrate, her little hand stacking cushions like it was the most important job in the world. Daddy, she said without looking up, did you ever build castles when you were little? I smiled. No, sweetheart. I didn't really have anyone to build them with. She looked up, puzzled. That's sad. It was, I said honestly. But it's not anymore. She patted the floor beside her. Then help me now. I dropped to the rug and began stacking with her. Because sometimes healing doesn't come in a single moment. It comes in the quiet ones, when you're asked to build, to stay, to choose love again. And you do. This is my life now. Not the one I expected. But the one I chose. Not the fairy tale. But something better. A happy ending that began the moment everything fell apart.